And hello, everybody. Welcome to Documentation Not Included, the very first episode, aka the MVP, aka Technical Difficulties Extraordinaire. You are in the extraordinary presence of two people with beards that I am exceptionally jealous of. These are my hosts. We have Chris.
That's not a beard. That's not a beard. I'm not having any of that.
I have nothing.
Yeah, but
Well, I've got these. These,
go on
these,
Etsy.
I guess, could count. Go on Etsy.
Honestly, I got my wife a beard on Etsy years ago.
My self-image is shattered, and I don't know if I can keep going now. It's just like everything's ruined, everything's gone.
Yes.
Oh, well, we have Talupe, and I always get your name wrong and how you pronounce it, but he says that Chris, he agrees with you. But then again, I happen to know that his particular beard, Talupe's beard, is like, it's nice.
Good, good man.
It is very nice.
The question is if he was asked to chop it off for charity, would he?
Me? Oh, dude, I
Anyone?
would look like I think depends on the person. Me, I'm quite hesitant because if I shave that, I look like a leukemia patient, and that's not the image I'm willing to maintain.
Right, so try and put us back on track as we're obviously going to be derailed by each other because we tend to do that. We have Chris here. Chris, go ahead and say hi, I dare ya.
So yes, hello everybody. I am Chris. I have previously done a few streams with my game development, but this stream is going to be more, I think, for me, it's going to be more focused on enterprise development, which is what my bread and butter is, really. I won't go any further, but yeah, thanks for having me.
Having you?
Well,
You're
know
one
what I mean.
of the hosts.
You know what I mean? Thanks for...
Okay, we have to get something really clear. We're not co-hosts.
No.
We're all hosts.
Yeah.
This is a literal group effort by the three of us to have a time put aside where we can talk about something that we love. And the interesting thing is, I mean, Chris and I, we work from home. So for us, being around other developers usually involves the chat room.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines. And we miss that talk. But we're skipping someone. We don't want to skip Pat. Go ahead, Pat, Mr. Baldy.
Hello, I'm Patryk Kowalik, and I'm a game developer. Oddly enough, I used to be an artist, so I'm gonna be the black sheep here, but I stumbled into graphics programming and shaders and stuff like that, and doing really weird stuff that is quite unholy when you look at the source code. So just don't look there.
That's already scary. I don't even know what to say. Some of you may actually know us already. We have collectively done a previous game development podcast that was known as Data Mine way back in the day. And time, life, experiences happened, and then documentation not included. Because as you know, as developers, there's never a need for documentation. Ever.
Well, we'll talk about that, won't we?
Oh, I'm sure we will. But a massive thank you, by the way, for everyone joining us. And go ahead, Patryk.
Yeah, stuff tends to get lost. I mean, I was in another country last time we were podcasting together, so, you know, so much things changed.
Yeah.
Well, I'm 100 pounds lighter than I was as well last time I streamed. If anybody does recognise me from any previous streams, I lost 7 stones, so...
Yeah, whereas I've gained some pudginess, but my hair is pretty much longer than anybody's. So I say most of my weight's in my hair. It's...
Yeah, I tend to support that claim.
Well, you have no hair except this, which is more beard than I can grow, so I really can't pick on that. So
you haven't seen my chest hair.
That's for another show. For another
Save that for another show. Yeah, absolutely. But yes, so now you know who we are. Now, in future episodes, we're actually going to have guests who will be joining us to talk about their various fields of expertise, the things that they're interested in. Basically, we're going to be bringing them on to pick their brains because we want to know. In the world of programming, in the world of development, it makes no difference whether you're doing app development, web development, DevOps, backend development, hardware development, PLC programming. It makes absolutely no difference. You can't know everything. I think probably the number one joke in coding is, let me Google that for you, or let me Slack exchange that for you, or in the old days, let me open up a book.
Oh, God.
Do you remember that?
Jesus.
See that there?
Yeah.
Actually, no, it doesn't have a single... Oh, it does. It's got Gang of 4 design patterns, a fairly famous book that's kind of generic across the board, and I've got a PowerShell book there that I bought and read once. And
Well, see, that shelf over there is full of a whole bunch of books that anyone can read. If you went up to the office that I have upstairs, that one is everything from disassembly to C# to C++ to web to code to like the world of crazy stuff, and it's a massive thing.
Stuff like that is really weird for me because I got into programming at the time where it was already sort of established on the internet. So you could, I mean, like by the time I went in, you could find anything that you would conceivably want, at least as a beginner, on the internet. And then it only got growing. So for the first time when I met Falco, lead programmer for Resident Shadows, and I saw his giant collection of books on C and C++ and assembly, I'm like, wait, do you actually like use those? And he showed me how used they were. Like the things were falling apart. So
I had some SQL books, SQL and early classic ASP books that I learned from basically when I first started programming. That and learning from other people's code, a lot of copying and pasting DHTML as it was called back then.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
How do you even copy and paste from a book? I mean,
no, copy and pasting from the internet when it first started, and there wasn't really a Stack Overflow.
I have to jump in on that from Patryk, but I'm going to hold off because I have to ask our first icebreaker question.
Yeah.
Now, this is the thing. Anyone who comes to join us on the show, yes, we're going to get into talking about development, but we want people to know you. We're not going to ask you what's your favorite programming language. That stuff will probably come out when we start to talk about whatever topic we're talking about. Instead, we're going to pick really random topics, and it's never going to be the same. So today's question for you awesome people, and yes, I'll be answering it too, and if you guys wish to participate in the chat, I'd love to see the answer. What was your favorite toy growing up, and why?
I think Legos for me. For me, it was definitely Legos.
Legos are always great, but it's too much of a default answer, that, for me.
You think it's a default answer?
It
How
is,
can Legos
because
be a default?
Legos, it's ubiquitous. Everybody knows Lego. Everybody uses Lego.
Not for me, because I grew up in Poland, Poland, and those things were expensive.
Well, they're expensive here as well, but
expensive as in like really expensive. Take as expensive as they are from them, because I know, like, I recently was browsing Legos as you do, and I was quite shocked at the price, and then I just sort of imagined how much worse it had to be in Poland, where, you know, it was like €1. It wasn't euros then, it was like let's take, like, I know, British pound. I was like, 15 zloty or something, so imagine everything times 15. Yeah, I was the cool kid, man. Like, those Legos were the shit.
I don't think anything's changed, Patryk. I think you're still the cool kid. Don't worry.
My favourite toys growing up, I have to say toys because I can't just say a single figure. Star Wars figures. Easily.
Really?
Yeah, I got so much joy out of... I had everything. I think everybody around my age has the same... I was into them anyway. Has the same story. I bought everything. I had the Ewok Village. I had 2 ATSTs. I had an AT-AT. I had everything you could conceive. And I sold them all at a car boot sale for 50 pence each.
Were they like the moving ones with joints, or were they static?
No, they were they were the original 80s ones, so they were brilliant, and they're still really good quality if you've got them now. They're just, the plastic's gone a bit brittle. But yeah, I had a Rancor as well. I had 2 Millennium... I don't know why I had 2 Millennium Falcons, but I did.
Why settle for just one?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Duh.
I think I might have broke one of them and got another one at a car boot or something.
Adwitcher says Tonka toys. I remember Tonka toys.
God. It's a bit before my time, that.
What?
Yep, they said they used to be made of metal, and they were advertised as unbreakable, so I took them on a real building site and tried to play. They did not last long, but it was so much fun.
What is that even? What is Tonka
Collectible
toys?
cars. Like the really chunky, well, Tonka trucks specifically were collectible trucks, but they were solid metal, as you just said.
How big? Like,
Well, they varied in size, because you could
Like
have
the
the
Hot
pickup
Wheels?
trucks, the dump trucks, and the little things. Like, they varied in size.
But were they like like a Hot Wheels scale, or like?
No, bigger
Bigger.
than that, yeah.
Like, you could like put one on my face.
That's a freaking weapon. I mean, that big truck made of metal. I mean,
Absolutely.
I wouldn't give that to a kid. Not because I would be worried for my kid's safety. I would be worried for other kids. Because knowing me, the little psychopath is gonna batter them off over the head with that.
Wow. See, for me, when I look back on my childhood, there are two things that stand out. And I think this kind of shows perhaps a bit how mental I am. The first was card collection. So some of the first cards I got my hands on were the Garbage Pail Kids.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely loved them. The second one, and this is so strange, it was Barbie's McDonald's store. But the reason why I loved it is it had parts that actually worked. So, like, you had a little cash register. It had a trash can that opened and closed. And it was brilliant with my Cabbage Patch doll that wore a hockey outfit and would come in with its little hockey stick and start, like, just...
I used to play with...
I was a destructive kid.
I had loads of Action Men, and I played with Barbie and She-Ra, and I was actually... my dad, at one point, brought home an Action Man specifically because he saw me playing with a She-Ra. Because I had all the He-Man figures, all the She-Ra figures, and a few of the... I can't remember the name of it, but there was a monster in a cave in He-Man, and I had the cave for that. And you had a little puppet you put your hand through the hole with.
They're making He-Man reboot.
Oh, probably. I give up.
Everything's getting rebooted.
But the animation is just horrible. Like, the art style is just like, don't do that.
So yes, we have those, and Witcher says that they were construction trucks, diggers, cranes, etc., and they worked, which is awesome. And Delippy says Lego Technic for me.
Yeah, I had Lego Technic as well, but it was very expensive in comparison to Lego, so I didn't have too much of it.
Do you guys remember that Lego with little computer that you could program and with motors and shit? I don't remember. It was like Lego something.
Well, Lego Technic had motors on it.
Mindstorm, I think it was called. It was like a more Technic than Lego Technic, and I always wanted it. And then recently I've learned it was like 1,000 something. I'm like, for a toy.
Wow.
Jesus.
Wow. I mean, heck, Speak and Spell was expensive, and I really loved my Speak and Spell.
I mean, that's more than my car.
And now you've learned the price of Patryk's car.
Yes.
So,
it's a solid machine.
That's our icebreaker question for today. We're now going to dig into our topic, which is, in a way, kind of interesting, kind of not. It's interesting for us because every time we sit and we talk to each other, we discover something new about each other. But what I will throw out to you who are watching, if you have questions you want to ask us specifically, please jump into this because this is literally, like I said, our MVP. So you're going to get a little bit of a foundation of who we are, what we've done, some of our experiences, although it's absolutely impossible to throw all of our experiences in here. And we're going to be, for the most part, open books about things because, hey, we're all developers here or interested in development or have questions about development or find somebody who is here that might be interesting to watch. It's them.
Don't put yourself down, Josey. You teach me new things every time I speak to you. Dust bunny, for example. Where the hell? I've never even heard that term before, and I'm still... My wife's heard it, but she knows everything. Somehow she's got all this information in her head that I've never heard of.
We wish I had brains.
To be fair, Josey, you're my go-to security expert, so if that's worth anything...
Well, just don't piss off Darth Securitas. You do not want that personality to come out in this show.
Yeah, you taught me all about DKIM and DKIM and DMARC. That was it.
SPF records and all the things that go with it. Yeah, here's the deal. We're going to introduce ourselves and go into a little bit of what it is we do, but we're also going to sort of start at the beginning, the things that got us interested. And I'd love to know what got you interested in whatever it is you do. And let us know what exactly you do. Give us an idea. I know there's some people who are watching who play with big toys. And by big toys, I mean really big toys. So, yeah. Let's start off with... Oh no, Patryk, you were quiet.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how to fix it. Technical difficulties. We tried to fix it in a pre-show, but the documentation just wasn't there, so...
Project.
That's it. If I could drop this mic.
I will be speaking with force in such a way that I will wake up my neighbors.
You need to get some bass traps and some... we need to get you some proper soundproofing, sound treatment.
I don't know
what
you have
against
my extremely professional recording studio.
Okay.
Anyhow, topic.
All right. So let's do this. Patryk,
Yes.
what do you currently do?
Yes. I am currently technical artist working on VR game. So virtual reality game development, which is quite interesting because you are way more performance conscious than your normal game dev. Nowadays, when you make a game, you sort of don't, especially indies, you just sort of don't have to give a shit, because no matter how abysmal your code / assets / optimization of anything is, modern systems gonna run it at 60 FPS, no problem. But with VR, you have to run it at 90 plus on both eyes, and things tend to get really bad, because if you drop, you're gonna vomit. Like, nausea is actually a huge problem with
Have you
that.
actually gotten sick?
Yeah, it's actually quite a daily occurrence for me, because sometimes we're gonna have weird visual bugs where just recently I had this issue where the horizon line, and but only the horizon, so everything else on a scene, so, buildings and yada yada, was fine, but looking in the distance at the horizon, as you were turning your head, the horizon was turning like that.
Oh.
And that got me so sick. I had to literally take the headset off, lie down for half an hour, and then for the rest of the day, I still was like on the verge.
That's exactly what happened to me. I played, I think it was Half-Life 2 in VR for 3 or 4 hours at a friend's at a LAN party. And after that, it just suddenly hit me. I got really warm, and I got a sickness in the pit of my stomach, and I just had to lie down for about an hour. I was fine after that, but it was really weird. I've never had that before.
It's a very prevalent with very early VR titles. Nowadays, everyone sort of got it sorted. Mostly it has to do with, as I said, like the FPS issue and with the movement. So some of the early games tried to be very immersive, because you have very limited play space. You have like, in your typical VR setup, you have like 2 by 2 meters of real world space. Some are just like stationary sitting experiences. So if you want to move in the game, you have to solve it somehow. We just use like joysticks or something. But then you have the problem of you are like, your eyes tell your brain that you're moving, but your inner ear and your body just tells you that no, you're just standing still. And there's the first bit of dissonance. But that's not a big deal. Some of the early games try to be very immersive and sway you a bit, because as you go, you sway your head. That was very bad. That's just like, don't do that.
The two, well, I've had a couple of different experiences with VR. The very first one that I had was actually at Gamescom a few years ago. And it was when Valkyrie was being showcased. And they brought all the press in, and we got a chance to actually play Valkyrie with the VR headsets. And as a first experience, it was mind-blowing to me. But when we were actually talking to the guys behind the team, and they were talking about how a subtle modification can take the game from being, this is epic, to basically vomit central.
Yep.
Yeah. And then my other one, there's a game room here in the part of the United Kingdom where I live, and they are building a 3D VR experience where you climb over literally physical objects. Yeah. It's just, they're decorated unique ways through the VR system. And I got together with my husband and a friend who would come over from the Netherlands, and we did the experience where you sort of stood still, and we were responsible for shooting crystals and destroying aliens and things like that. And that was hysterically fun. I have yet, I say yet because I know what's coming, I've yet to have an experience with VR where I feel like I'm like, I can't contain myself. So
yeah, that is go on.
We'll go into VR at some point. We really will. But that's where you're currently at right now with all of your things. So you're working in VR, and so it's not just the graphics side for you, sir.
Yeah, for me it's well, the coding side of it is strictly graphics. So shaders, optimization of shaders, some geometry generation. So that's also fun. Yeah, that's the programming side of the development. The rest of it for me is mostly level design, balancing, and this sort of user experience adjustments.
Do you do 2D design as well for the UIs in games? Or?
Funny thing, I mean, yes, I'm also doing that, but you can do way cooler stuff than just 2D design, because suddenly you have depth perception, and you have those things where you can reach into depth, and you have like multiple screens when you can just move, let's say, one screen here and the other one slightly behind it further when it's not really bothering you. Oh, it's amazing when you can just sort of readjust the screens like that. For me, that's the future of just like the computer experience, because I mean, for those who don't know, I am currently in a pissing contest with Chris over who has the better setup and the amount of monitors we have.
Well, obviously me.
He's currently winning.
No.
Currently always will be winning, because the second that you get even remotely close to me, I'll just go and buy another one. In fact, I'll just recommission one or two of the ones that I've got over there that I don't use.
Hi, my name is Josey, and I am looking to purchase a virtual whip, one with spikes possibly, and perhaps maybe some electricity as well. But yeah, so we know where you're at, Pat.
But what I was I wonder, can I?
Fine.
Oh.
So what I was going with it is that once the headset, because currently there is quite the issue for resolution and stuff like that, and the fact that you have a heavy screen on your face, so that's sort of bad on your neck. But once that gets very seamless, I think that's gonna replace the computer screen, because suddenly you have 360 with depth perception. I mean, there's just no.
I think it's a wonderful precedent. I think that needs to be saved for another show. I think it's got a lot of depth, VR, literally. But...
Funny. We should have a pun counter. Pun 1.
Aye. But yes, no. I think VRs are personally AR and VR. I think are brilliant. I haven't yet invested in a headset myself. I have used friends' headsets. I have used developer and commercial releases, but I'm not quite ready to get one myself. There's not enough software out there yet for me. It needs a killer app. It needs a killer game for me. It needs a game that I cannot do without, that needs a headset,
Okay, that's fair enough. It's sort of the same thing with some of the jumps I've made with different platforms. But, Chris, what do you do?
So now I am we were talking about job titles the other day. I don't really have a job title because I'm essentially a contractor. I do a lot of contract work for big companies. I do enterprise web development, app development specifically. That also includes technical architecture and DevOps. I do pretty much the full spectrum from inception design all the way through to deployment and maintenance afterwards as well. So, I have experience in the web stack, the Microsoft stack, lots and lots of different database systems. DevOps is something I've been getting into for the last two or 3 years. So I'm building up my Linux stack and my kind of deployment stack a little bit more. Currently working with Docker Compose, starting to play with Kubernetes, but it's not something that I'm big on at the moment. So yeah, that's essentially where I'm at right now. I'm lots of different clients. I'm desperately trying to change my model from a contracting model where I've got 3 months worth of work, 6 months worth of work, 9 months worth of work, which is great. It's profitable, but it's not really the model I really enjoy. I enjoy the consultation side of things. I enjoy speaking to clients and solving their problems without kind of too many barriers,
So basically, you're the more mature of us. The more put together one.
Maybe.
I have to ask though, it cracks me up. I hear, and it's funny because the way I would describe what I do is full stack. But what stack? There's so many stacks. Yeah. There's chimney stacks. There's hay stacks.
And the problem is the industry that I work in. As I said, I work for big banks, big insurance companies, little places as well. I work for small teams. I've just recently put together a psychometric data collection API for one of my clients. I can't say any more because I'm under
that just sounds sci-fi, man.
No, it sounds fancier than it is. All it is a web API that's got a few methods on it that captures data and plonks it into a Mongo database. It's not particularly
psychometric.
Well, psychometric is because they are capturing analytical data based on clinical trials and studies. They're actually the place that I was doing work for. I can tell you this much. They're actually working on drugs and software, i.e. games. They're using Unity. I haven't told you guys anything about this, actually.
I know, like I said, we learn something new every time.
So what they needed two people to come in. They needed somebody to do the front-end work. They've got someone in who specialises in Xamarin. I do a bit of Xamarin, but I'm not a specialist in that, so that was good for me. And then they wanted a back-end guy to do all of the really complicated stuff that doesn't really get any praise. There's loads of work involved in it, but it's all behind the scenes. It's an API and all the other stuff. So I was that guy. So I designed that system for them. But what they're doing is they're putting together a Xamarin app which collects data based on psychometric tests that their clinicians have developed, and then also a game in Unity 3D that is also collecting psychometric data. Again, I can't go into any more detail than that, but it was very interesting, and the data structures were so different from what I'm used to working. I'm used to working with strongly typed stuff, very rigid data sets.
Not weak type.
Well, this isn't even weak type. It's strongly typed, but it's almost like a meta system, a meta database system. So you imagine it's all JSON at the end of the day, but it's just this huge. Everything that we captured was this massive JSON structure, and every test that they did, maybe 3 or 4 on each different platform, had a completely different data structure, hence why I use Mongo to put it together. But yeah, so that's what I'm doing at the moment. I've come from much more humble backgrounds, but I do all kinds of things for people. Yeah, anything from just helping a startup get going to, I don't know, designing an enterprise system for a multinational corporation.
Amazing stuff. And you, Josey, what do you do right now?
Well, right now I'm talking to two engaging gentlemen about things in the development world. No, in my particular case, I actually sat down with my husband to try to figure out what the hell I do, because I do so many different things. And he basically looked at me and he just said, well, you're full stack. And I said, well, thank you. I appreciate the compliment. And he went, no. What I mean by this is I help out anybody who needs help through my company. I sort of do what Chris does. I freelance, I consult. But I can be as simple as the whip cracker for making certain a project gets done, aka project management, to being the person who starts with the staging, deployment, playing with prod, doing all the things that go with it. At this current moment in time, I've decided to focus on helping writers, actually. That's my current obsession, is getting writers their author platforms. So I do everything from VA to web hosting, development, etc. But I also have a whole bunch of fingers and a lot of pies from, as Patryk pointed out, I have a small obsession with security. With tech security and things like that. Everything from social engineering on down. But yes, I have a very...
Josey, about this about the author's deal, do you just provide... Do you sort of work on the software solution, or are you trying to do the more like a community outreach, publishers outreach?
Every client I have has sort of something different. It's so weird. I'm sort of like this a la carte apple pie, not in any way, shape, or form apple pie. So if somebody needs a website, that is one of the most common parts of an author platform. If someone mail servers, my clients will look at me and go, what? And if I say mail servers, they'll go, what? And if I try to explain what email is, they go, oh, you mean the thing I get on my phone? So I have this fantastic abstraction, but I do all of the stuff. I have an obsession with knowledge and learning.
See,
Which means I know a lot about tons of weird stuff. I feel really weird.
Growing up, I was quite worried about the job security of programmers because, it seems like everyone is computer illiterate and everyone sort of knows programming. But nowadays, people just don't really engage with that. And it seems like we gone opposite. We had this nice sort of upsurge when people were getting more and more technologically literate, and then just cliff. And it just doesn't exist. Like, everyone treats it as a black box that's just sort of those magic thingy, and some witches cast some spells on it, and now I can contact people on the other side of the world.
Everything is abstracted, though, isn't it? And everything is a service now. Everything's been done. And all we need to do as programmers these days is abstract that information from the third party into a piece of software. And that's how we make software these days.
I don't know. See, I think it depends. I mean, one of the things that we all agreed on when we were talking about this show is that for us, a lot of what we do is we take software as a service and sort of make it do something, or we create the software that becomes software as a service or things like that. However, abstraction is my favorite word, and these guys will tell you that because we've had long discussions about the abstraction. When I started getting into technology, when I started digging into what things actually were, I actually started in the guts. I started at the IRQs. I started at the buses. I started really low down. And from there, I built my platform into understanding how data moves to then understanding how it's all saved, why on a particular hard drive. This was back when everything still spun, because SSDs are a thing unto themselves now. But, why you would want a file stored on a particular part of a disk versus another part of a disk. And then if you wanted to write that, what you would want the OS to do to make that write well and make good use of the MFTs. And I started down there. Mm-hmm. And then I moved into, now that I know how the computer works, how do they talk to each other? And that's when I started getting into everything from the OSI model to I dug deep. Nowadays, if you were to ask me what the hardware interrupt is going to be for something, I'm going to go 9 times out of 10, there isn't a hardware interrupt for that particular device because it's USB implemented. But
Great question.
But the thing is, we're getting further and further and further away from. I mean, my goodness, if you want to abstract the motherboard, you're starting to get into sand, silicone, quartz, crystals.
Well, yeah, that's taking it a bit too far, I think, isn't it?
We had to walk 2 miles to dig the bits from the bit mines, and then we had to push the electron cards.
And this is Patryk's past.
Yes. Yeah. But see, back in my day when we were learning how to program, we had to first put it on a whiteboard, and then we had to make certain that it worked well, and we had to do it by hand, and then we had to print it out in a dot matrix, and then we had to feed it back in through the dot matrix. I mean, we could go crazy. We could go proper Yorkshire communicate type things here.
I know it's a Halloween, but ease down the horror stories, all right?
Well, speaking of horror stories, Philippi says motherboard equals summoning pentagram.
Yeah, I'm not a hardware guy. I've never really. I understand a computer. I can put a computer together.
There are some people who would say that if you don't understand the hardware, then how can you make the most use of it?
I understand it enough.
I mean,
that's the thing, isn't it? I make enterprise systems for big companies that don't want to be bothered with all of that low level stuff. They want to provide software that improves their business. That is essential. You said you were speaking to your husband about trying to figure out what you do. Last year, I spent quite a lot of time doing networking and speaking to other businesses, trying to figure out how to sell myself or how to sell my business rather than going through agencies and doing the contracting work. And it's a very, very slow burner, but it's getting to a point now where I'm starting to figure out what I want. And one of the things I had to do to get to that point is, have you heard of a guy called Simon Sinek? He is a bit of an evangelist kind of life coach guy. He's actually quite. I'm not into that.
Specifically, talk about, because I've seen so many.
Yeah, he does basically his main premise is find your why. Why do you do what you do? What is the reason? And there's lots of different reasons. We've all got different reasons, but what is the why? That is his thing, and he's done this golden circle thing where you work from the why outwards, and then you figure out what you're selling and how you're going to sell it from there. And it's kind of a sales technique.
Sales comes across to me, just so you know, like black magic.
Yes, same here. I'm not a marketing guy or a sales
I hear
guy.
golden circle and my brain's like, we were just talking about the summoning pentagram, and now we've got the golden circle.
Yeah.
Are we going to start wearing hats now? Should I bring out like the feathers? I mean, is there a dance? Do we need to learn a handshake?
It's just a seminar, to be fair. But yeah, he's got this thing, and I used kind of a few of the techniques that he put together, and I figured out my values, what I actually value, why I sell what I want to, why I want to sell what I sell. It's not for money. It's I love what I do. I thoroughly enjoy creating. It's my art. I create software out of zilch. I find all these different tools and frameworks, and I figure out what I need to get from them, and then I put them all together and smush them up, and eventually something works nicely. There's lots of things. That's the
You're
simple.
a professional smusher.
Yeah, I'm a professional. That's what we all do. And if anybody else, if a professional software developer says anything different, they're a bit above the station. I think you've got to understand what you are. My job's evolved from writing lower level programming. Writing my own SMTP server, writing all my own. I wrote egg drop bots back in the IRC days. All kinds of little daft things.
Oh wow, that takes me right back.
But now it's a different thing because of all of these abstractions. We've got to a point where I'm designing systems based on the opinions of other systems and other frameworks. We've heard of an opinionated piece of software or opinionated framework. Like Angular, for example. Angular is opinionated, very, very opinionated, and has a learning curve like that back on itself. It's awful, but it's brilliant. But yeah, I'm getting a bit away with myself. But there is
Angular. We can actually save for next week because we have a guest coming on to talk about JavaScript and the flavors of JavaScript, and Angular will be a part of that discussion along with Node and a few other things. But anyway,
yeah. So I think for me, I've come from a background of self-learning. Everything I do is self-learned, is self-taught rather. I come from playing around with HTML on a Wednesday dinner time at college, in the classes where I was trying to play Doom on the computers and everything was locked down, and we eventually got around it all. All that kind of that's the stuff that I've learned from. I've figured out how a computer works from hacking around, but now I follow lots of patterns and practices and everything I do is best practice, and everything I do is test driven, and everything I do is even personal projects.
There's a debate to be had on best practices for some things, but I'm just going to jump right on top of you here, Patryk, and just talk right over it. I'll let you speak in a second, I promise. I think all three of us, in our own way, come from the old school hacker methodology. Play with it until you break it and figure out how it works, and then put it together and maybe make it do something it's not supposed to do. How does this thing work? Why does this thing function how it does? It's why I like lockpicking. It's why I got into learning about how you can take a packet and malform it to do weird things. It's there's so much to learn. But that old school methodology of just how.
To be fair, I think that's the best way to learn, though. And not every programmer starts by sort of like self-teaching, but every programmer that I met and I admire started that way. Everyone sort of like started by, doing the basic stuff and trying to figure out on their own and fucking with it a bit and like malforming it maybe, and weird shit happens and it's cool, and oh wait, it's a blue screen of death, but whatever, it's fun. So, there is some certain quality of a person to be found there that's very indicative of certain type of developer, and just so happens those are the people that I thoroughly enjoy working with.
I have a challenge for you, Josey.
Oh, good God.
Josey, by the way, to everybody, is our community manager. She's the person who's going to get our guests and manage our guests, find outreach to people,
manage them.
So,
basically, I'm going to control your life for a very short period of time. It'll be fun.
My challenge is, I've just observed something here, and one of the reasons I'm doing this show is to challenge myself. I want people to throw facts and things at me that I don't know, because I don't know everything, and I never will know everything. but I want to learn, and I'd like to have a little bit more insight as to how CG works. You know, how VR sits together. I've played around with these things, but I'm not an expert. But my challenge to you, Josey, is to find somebody who comes, a programmer, a very good programmer, who comes from an academic background, a very solid academic background. And it's not a challenge because they do exist, absolutely. But most people I know,
I can think of a few right at the top of my head.
Like computer scientist type of deal. Like
well, I'm talking about somebody who
machine.
who puts stock in that, who can argue with us, because all three of us just agreed then that it's the best way.
This is something that we should mark, by the way, in calendars. Us three agreeing on something. I mean, even getting this show prepared, it is a unique exercise. We don't agree on everything.
We don't.
But
we always come to an agreement or an understanding somewhere that we've made progress, and we've made quite a lot of progress. I'm proud of what we've done here so far. I've got to be honest, and blowing our own trumpet, but I'm proud of what we've done so far. And it is only our first show.
What I'll do is I will go looking. In fact, actually, you guys who are watching, if you happen to know somebody who puts the stock more so in, say, the academic side of learning to programming than the, what does it do when I call this? What happens if I overload this? Like, get in touch, because I'm like rolling through the Rolodex of my brain, which is very dusty and old. And it is a Rolodex. It isn't actually like some kind of proper
it's not a Mongo database.
Electronic. No, it's not
the React front end and the.
I am trying to get somebody on the show who is a database person. I mean, one of my degrees is in database management, administration, and security. I have 3 degrees for various different reasons.
I did a job for a client the other day. They wanted me to do some database stuff with them. And I logged in, third-party proprietary software that they wanted me to help with. Logged into their system, got onto the database server, SQL Server. Got in with SA blank. And then when I logged into the user table, the first thing I did was check the user table on the proprietary database. Can you guess what I'm going to say?
I have, you can't see it. My fingers are crossed. My toes are.
First of all the usernames are just first names, right? And that's not even a bad thing. That's just.
It depends on the access and all that. Yeah.
It depends how big the company is, but generally you should make them more unique. Anyway, secondly, most of the passwords are blank in the database. So they were blank. Were you logged in with Andy blank or whatever? There was one password in there, and it was the system administrator account, and it was plain text. I got into the database. And it's just like, whoa. And I did mention it to them. It wasn't what I was looking at, though. I wasn't there to do a security review, but there was a number of other things that I also noticed. But I'm not going to hard sell that, but it's worrying how many times I come across that kind of thing, really. Yeah.
There's a level of pain that happens inside me a little bit when I hear that. But again, to be fair, though, it can depend upon circumstance. I can actually think of a purpose and a time when that's actually acceptable, even in a security setting. And that's a weird thing, but I can think of a time and a place when it can happen. But what I was going to say is there is somebody who I absolutely love and adore. And if, lady, you happen to be watching, I'm trying to get you on. But she specializes in databases. And her big thing is trying to get people to go back to using them properly.
You're going to be struggling, especially with all of the new... forgot the name of it, ORM frameworks, and they're big now. They're big in the enterprise world. ORM and developers love developing with code. They love developing databases with code.
You think, but there's something to be said for bleeding edge. Let's jump to the future, right? Mm-hmm. The future is coming. It's not going to stop. Time is one of the few constants in this entire universe that I absolutely love and worship. There are going to be changes that happen. And back in the day, it was the whole hardware side of, yes, we're seeing leaps and jumps and everything within the hardware. I mean, I don't know if you remember Rambus memory.
Yeah.
That was the fastest thing ever, but the standard just really didn't take off.
Did the N64 have Rambus on it? That rings bells.
I don't know.
I think it might have done. I don't think you could get the expansion in the UK, but from my recollection anyway.
Well, but point is, what we have is we saw the bleeding edge stuff come in when it came to hardware, and then we saw the servers. I mean, I don't know if you've ever gotten a chance to walk into a data center, a properly wired, fully configured, properly rack mounted, blinky light, that air blowing across your skin as you're walking around looking at the prettiness. Basically, that's hardware porn. There was this time when that was like the thing. It was the bleeding edge.
Getting a co-located server in there.
Yeah, and then everything was starting to abstract, and now we're in this sort of, I'm going to go right on the record here of saying I hate the word cloud.
I hate it.
I hate it so much, it's not even funny.
It doesn't even mean anything.
I understand why it is used, but if you are a manager or if you are a leader in the industry of any type, please actually use terms other than cloud. Okay, thanks. It's one of the few things I feel really strongly about.
There's a few things I'm the same. I get quite, you've seen already, I'm pretty sure. I can get quite animated. I'm a laid-back person normally, but I can get quite animated when the cloud is one of them, to be fair. It's such a... Let's talk about it another show.
Yeah,
we're coming up to
my point is there are so many things that you can access virtually now, and so many things that you can do that's the new bleeding edge. And yet, as much as there may be someone out there who wants to dig into the latest and greatest, there are a lot of companies who can't do that. And this means that we need the people. We need the old school people who understand how to do those IRQ interrupts in software. We need those people who understand how to set up and maintain really old databases. We need people who still can do COBOL.
Yeah, I mean, it's a meme, but COBOL is still being used.
Oh, it is. It was a couple of years ago. I had a contract, and I was working with somebody who was still... Was it Big Endian? I can't remember. There was some character set they had to use specifically within COBOL, and there was I can't even remember, but it was such a weird thing for me. I didn't understand it. It was a special control character that they needed, and I can't remember what it was now.
But that's the thing. I mean, in my industry and the things that I do, I can literally see the future of me doing exactly what I'm doing right now forever, never changing. That would be really boring. I like to evolve. I'm a bit like a Pokemon. I don't know why I just started thinking of Squirtle, but
come to game development, because I, on the other hand, have plenty of exciting news. See,
this is the thing. I'm not done just yet with my future.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay, because you can totally talk over me. I did it earlier in the show. You go right ahead with your big bad self.
Please do finish the topic. I mean, I'm dying to hear. Seriously.
Get a room, you two.
So
just because your husband's out, or Josey.
I promise it was without sarcasm.
Number one rule about Patryk: I can never tell when he's trolling. I'm just assuming he's always trolling. No, the thing is, for me, the future is always going to be whatever is needed. That's it. If we need to set it up in a way that, we have an easy way for, in my case, like if I focus on writers, writers really need a lot of basic tools to do the fundamental. Technically, they need a pen and a piece of paper. Heck, even then, if you're a storyteller, you just need some way to communicate the story. It doesn't even have to be that. You could do sign language. You could, just sit there and tell a story to someone, etc. But tools are constantly evolving to help them improve or to speed up the process, the workflow, the process, whatever's needed to make that faster. And I think for the future, it's always going to simply be, how can we make what we already do faster, which is where we get into scripting, and that's a topic for another show.
Do you not think, though, that all these new tools come in, and the speed, there seems to be an arc. You go from taking ages and ages and ages to do something, and it goes down and down as you get more used to it, and then a new tool comes in, and then you spike back up again, and it takes ages and ages and ages to achieve the same thing or a better thing, but it takes you slightly longer that time because it's more advanced and there's more configuration. I'm thinking here specifically about deploying software, for example. We started out...
I'm an early adopter. This goes back to that whole hacker mentality. I'm an early adopter. I want to see what it is you're bringing. I want to see why you're bringing. I want to see what you're trying to accomplish with it. And then I will go, how do I adapt it if I want to? Or how do I just look at it, acknowledge that this is kind of cool, but it's not something that I need, but I at least know something like this exists, which means there's going to be competitors in the future. Like, I'm an early adopter. I love to play in the new things. For me, taking on something brand new isn't a time constraint because I'm so used to it.
No, it is part of our job. It's what we do, and I said that's the. But if you look at it in terms of, remember that I'm looking from an enterprise point of view, where everything is about money and time, and everything is about wanting to save that. People like myself who work for these insurance companies, they're not cheap, and they cost a lot of money, even though we're temporary staff or temporarily engaged with them anyway. The more streamlined, the more automated, the less work there is involved in something, the better it is for that company. Hence why all these abstractions and all these 4th, 5th, 6th generation languages come out. But I'm thinking, if we look specifically at deployment of software, so you used to copy and you used to build whatever. In fact, sometimes you didn't even need to build old web software. It was compiled on the fly, like classic ASP, PHP, that kind of thing. But you build it and then you deploy it. You'd copy it and paste it. And then these automated tools would come out and you'd be able to start scripting things and automatically upload to an FTP. And now, all this new DevOps stuff is all about containerization and, it was virtualization, which was you needed another person to deal with the infrastructure for the hyper terminals or whatever they're setting up. I'm not a hardware guy. And then now you've got DevOps people who is another role that's come out of nowhere. And it's really required. It's starting to become a necessary thing.
The definition of DevOps is different in every single company I have ever spoken to. And it is a term, like cloud, that to me is bandied about in a way that is destructive to our industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it just is.
What do you mean by DevOps? Can you specify it?
So developer operations, it stands well. Yeah. I don't think it officially stands for that, but that's... Yeah.
It's hip for that kind of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds cool. It's not,
so
like secret.
DevOps is the process of. There's quite a few different definitions of it, but essentially it encapsulates the deployment of infrastructure, the deployment of software, the kind of liaison between your infrastructure and your software teams. So a DevOps guy might sit in between those and he might go, right, we actually need to provision a new VM for this particular piece of software.
Does it include automated testing and stuff like that?
It does, yes, and monitoring. So if things are going wrong within your processes, things like reporting that builds have kicked off and all the CI, the continuous integration and continuous deployment stuff is included in that.
Sorry.
Yeah, again, but there's lots and lots of different tools that do the same thing in lots of different ways. Vagrant, Docker, Kubernetes, Octopus.
Octopus with all of its tentacles.
Yeah, I mean, I love Octopus, but it's not appropriate for every use case,
No, it's not. No, it's not.
That's the thing. There are so many tools out there doing the same thing, and this is an annoyance of mine. And shall we move on to the R.T.F.M section and use this as the R.T.F.M section?
Okay, so yes, here's the deal. At the end of our show, we have two parts to kind of close our way out of our show. We have a section called the R.T.F.M because in documentation not included, obviously you need to R.T.F.M. For those of you who are, for some unusual reason, unaware of what R.T.F.M stands for, Patryk?
I don't know.
He doesn't know. We have to tell him if you don't remember.
Exactly.
It contains one of his favorite words.
Read the...
I remember it was something about read the fucking manual or something.
There we go.
Bingo! Hey. And in this particular part of the show, this is where we kind of reveal something that's either a little bugbear, a little gripe, or if you have something you want us to share with the rest of the world, think of it a bit like a little rant section.
I have one.
Go on, because I've actually forgotten what I was going to say now.
Fantastic.
Really like obscure, fucking rarely used acronyms. Why?
Oh.
Why? I mean, this I get. But you know, there is. I don't know why. Is it development specific or what? But there is a lot of unnecessary acronyms, which just makes, like, you know, when developers talk with each other, it almost sounds like they're casting spells. And it definitely makes for the entire industry to look more obscure than it needs to be.
I think it's trying to simplify the industry, if anything, because it's so. If you walk up to just a normal person in the street and say to them, I'm trying to think of an acronym now, ALM.
Exactly. Yeah.
ERP. None of them are really relevant.
Oh, ERP is a brilliant one. You know what? Let's just jump the bandwagon with ERP. What is an ERP, Chris?
An enterprise resource system. And an
Are
ERP,
you sure it's not erotic role play?
No. Yes.
Okay. I have actually, because of the industry that I work in, some of the authors that I work with are romance writers. So when they start talking about things like ERP or stuff like that, I have to kind of put my brain on and go, right, which acronym do I need to apply to this situation here and now? Okay, continue.
So yes, it incorporates and encapsulates lots of different software systems. It's not one big thing. It has everything an enterprise needs, from a stock control system all the way through to account systems, management, ETL systems, everything that you might need to run a business, run a big business. It's the software, basically. It's the best way to describe it.
When it comes to acronyms, because I have to kind of, I'm of two minds. When I am tired and I've had a long day, I basically want acronyms to DIAF.
Nope, don't know that one.
Die in a fire. Because they can get really, really confusing. And like, take the ERP thing. That is still one of those things I have to. There are so many acronyms, it's insane. And what gets frustrating to me is that it can, instead of improving growth in the world of programming and the world of development, it throws barriers up. Because if you send someone to learn about something and all you give them is an acronym, or you just casually mention it and someone goes, I wonder what they meant by that. There are holes on the internet you can find yourself in because you didn't know a really good way to do. I don't know. I kind of like it, but I hate it.
That's your responsibility as the developer or the person who is receiving that acronym and they're not heard it. It's your responsibility to ask them and clarify what it is. Simple as
you
that.
don't always get that chance if you're reading a book or if you're watching someone's podcast or, you know, there's not always that real life element. How much of your information as a developer or a programmer do you get from communication with other people?
Nearly all of it.
Yeah, and here is the extra cancer on top of that.
Not everything.
Because Google now likes very much to personalize searches for you. If you are categorized as a non-developer and then you try to look for developer-specific acronyms, and let's say maybe you are like, you know, a writer, or you like you play tabletop games, you know, role-playing games, and someone tells you ERP, all you're gonna get is that hot fucking sweaty porn from Goldshire from World of Warcraft. I'm telling you.
I don't think you're going. Well, you might get Goldshire porn. I'm sure there is fanfic of it, but you know, when it comes to acronyms, I have a love-hate relationship with them. I do. And I think we could have an entire conversation with just acronyms.
I enjoy making them up. I came up with one. It was RAPID, and I think it was Resource Allocation and Password Database.
That's just something like that. That's just backronym at this point.
I know, but
backronym.
The thing is, right? You need something that describes how a huge software suite works. That's what an acronym is. It's shortening and making it less. It's making it so into a colloquial term. If you're making a piece of software that other people can reference it as. So instead of going, did you work on did you put that into the resource allocation and password database, or did you put that into Rapid? Everyone knows what Rapid is. That's why they exist.
If you have some kind of connection to it, you don't always. Yes. It's a love-hate thing. But yes, that's R.T.F.M. Here is our second thing that we close the show with. This is our suggestions. This can be anything that we want people. Be it programming, something, a tool you like. It could be a TV show you're watching. It could be a book you like. Heck, it could even be a color you want people to check out because colors are cool.
Colors
are the best. But only if you reference them by their hex value and then you specify whether they're gamma corrected or not.
Hex values are getting less and less useful.
Hex values they're fading for RGBA.
I really like them though. Nice
that doesn't mean anything, Patrick.
Everybody who is programming in the world, no matter what you're working on, Patryk likes hex. He appreciates hex. RGBA can die in a fire. Get to work on that now, because you have to appeal.
I mean, individual RGB values are fucking amazing once you do some shader work and some, calculations on the individual channels. But then, if I, let's say, want to give any other artist or someone else reference a color, I'm not gonna give him 3 values. That's way too much. We have.
So you give him 6.
There are starving children in Africa who don't get enough bits. I'm not gonna, just throw away the bits around. We need to be a lot more, concise and.
Wow. Okay. So while we've accomplished that, Chris, do you have something that you might want to suggest, recommend, shout out?
You know what? Off the top of my head right now, I don't. However, I do have a link for a little browser game that I play quite often. You've probably seen it before, and it's called agar.io. I knew I'd do that at least one point.
Oh, someone's going to show up on the stream. I'm looking forward to this.
The wrong browser in the wrong screen. Yeah, agar.io, and it's a little browser game, and you just a little dot and you grow, and there's loads of other people playing it all the time. And
can you actually put the link in chat?
Yeah, I'm just about to. Yeah.
Score.
Oh, it looks like there's a hex code on the end of the URL as well.
No, not a hex code.
Yeah, I'll take it off. There you go.
Was I first?
Beat me. Anyway, yeah, it's a great little game, just a time waster every now and again.
Yeah, from me, it would be a series of fantasy books, Gotrek and Felix. If you are interested in fantasy of the sorts, it's great because it's very grimdark. It's set in a Warhammer Fantasy universe, which is little bit less heroic than your typical setting. So it's really fun. It's really fun to read, and yeah. But beware, because that shit is addictive. I sunk 130 euros just buying books on Kindle constantly. I was finishing them. So yeah, there is quite a lot of them. So yeah.
So to the authors who I work with who are watching, write grimdark and make it in such a way that Patryk can't stop reading it because he's addicted to it. You'll make all of your money off of him.
Books are my bane. Books are my bane. There's no such thing that's more addictive than books.
I have to agree with you. I really do.
I can't get into it. I've tried and tried and tried, and every now and again I get a really good book and read it to death and read it very quickly. But I've got that film that came out recently, Ready Player One.
Yeah, Ready Player One, yeah.
I have an opinion about Ready Player One that is probably not going to be one that makes people happy.
I haven't seen the film, so I don't know what it's about. But
everyone tells me to watch it, and he's like, you're working in VR, you should totally watch it. I'm like,
the book is good so far, but it's a bit.
I am only going to say this.
Contrived. That's the word I'm looking for.
I find it lazy.
Yeah.
Explain.
That gets into spoilers. I'll do it after the show, and we don't want to spend too much time because we're running a little over today. So let's pull ourselves back. But so that's yours, and if you want to type out the name of the series you want people to know about, that would be fabulous as well. In my case, I'm going to take it old school. I'm going to take it back to this. Mm-hmm. This is a very special piece of jewelry because it has a very special place in my heart as part of one of the very first games that basically got me addicted to series. And I am going to put a link up to American McGee's blog. Now, the reason why I am doing this is because I just love American. He's brilliant. I love Martin. Martin is sort of his community guy, and I also love Lulu. Lulu is their dog. Well, it's American's puppy, and Lulu is this adorable. I think she's like a little French bull or something like that. She's so tiny, but she is crazy. But American McGee is currently getting back into trying to get Alice 3, which is known as Alice Asylum, worked on. And he's already sent his information over to EA. EA reached out to him and said, so you want to talk American Alice 3? So every possible thing, finger crossed.
So is it just now that talks about financing, or is it actually in pre-production? What's the stage?
At this current moment in time, they're waiting to hear back, I believe, on their proposal. In fact, every single week, for the most part, although there was a break recently because American was in Thailand, they do a live stream on YouTube. There's also a Patreon you can get involved in, and I think it's the $5 tier up. You gain access to a Patreon-specific Discord, which literally helps you crowd develop the game. It's something Americans trying.
That's a topic that we could probably get into at some point. This sort of like a community-driven payment for developers via Patreon or something.
There is something to be said for that. There are so many developers I know who they live and die by what company they work for, and then we know of some others who can make 14,000 a month through Patreon. It's such a crazy thing, but again, it always comes down to the product. It comes down to what it is you're developing. It comes down to actually a lot about the maturity of the product you're on too, because a lot of people don't want to fund something that just some Joe Schmo. You kind of have to prove why someone should do it, which is something we did back in the dead of mine. We wwere talking about Kickstarter, which is how I met you, Patryk, all those years ago. Oh, it's amazing.
You still remember? Oh.
It was one of the few episodes I could ever not forget.
I was younger back then, with more hair and less charm.
Less charm.
I feel like we were on a show together.
I'm ever improving. How could you?
Oh yes, you both ended up as hosts with me on the data.
Was that why? Yeah, I remember we did something, but I can't remember what.
Do you remember DJ Arcus?
I do. Yes, I've seen him quite a few times since.
He's still developing games. He's still twisting his game. It's fascinating to watch.
I've met him in real life as well. Now I went to a LAN party and he happened to be there promoting his he does projector games. He's called, and he brings a projector along, and it's kind of. One of the game he was playing when I was there was you build a ship and then the AI kind of uses that ship to try and defeat the enemies or defeat the game. But it was a very different kind of thing for a LAN party. It's quite interesting. But I got to meet him and said hello and everything.
I love him. I love him bits and pieces.
I had him on Residence Arcade a few times as well.
But yes, so that is our recommendations and stuff. Just something to leave you with to show you that we do more in our life than just dev or geek. Although, to be fair, every single thing that we shared is geek-oriented in some way.
Absolutely, yeah. My life is geek.
I am a proud geek. Actually, when I was... one of the first jobs that I got in the tech world, I got because the system administrator found files that I had left on the server. Anyway, in that particular position, they had a sign-up. And there was a sign in their office, and the sign said, geek used to be a 4-letter word. Now it's a 6-figure salary. I'm still wondering where those extras are. But...
Yeah, I'm missing a few. But...
I'm missing just a few. But geek is such a term unto itself today. But other than that,
yeah,
a massive thank you to Chris, who is handling all of our transition music and streaming.
Trying. Sorry about there have been some technical difficulties. You'll be glad to see. I think somebody said, "Where are they?" I'm disappointed. Somebody in chat said earlier on that they were disappointed that there wasn't any yet. It's all too smooth. I can't remember who it was now. It was.
Wait till we start doing sharing of videos and content. Like that's gonna get crazy. Also, thank you, Patryk, who has helped out our. You'll see the prettiness of all of the graphics that you see. It's all a big product of him and his ingenious. A massive thank you has to be given out to Firemain Studio. She totally nailed our logo. We're not logo people.
No, yeah. I'm not graphical in the slightest.
No. And our website will be up soon. Do check that out.
I would say massive thanks to our audience. I wouldn't expect for so many people to turn up. I'm frankly flattered.
Yeah, it's nice for a first show. Thank you everyone for watching. And
yes, it's only going to get worse. All the rest of the shows are going to have tons of technical difficulties, and we're going to have like one person show up, and it's going to be one of us because we remembered.
Oh, hush you. It's going to be amazing, and rainbows and sprinkles with extra cream. It's going to be great.
And if you haven't already, make sure you follow and subscribe our Twitch channel. And we're also on Twitter as well. We have a website coming. I am in the well, it's finished. I'm just in the process of trying to get it deployed with all these new brilliant DevOps tools. And
it's deploying.
Well, here's the beautiful thing. This is our very first show, but this is also the very first time that I got to dig in a little deeper into Angular because our site is based on it. In fact, we're on GitHub if you want to check out some of the stuff we're doing. We're trying to make everything as open as possible. And if you actually want to get involved in development on some of the stuff and the tools, and heck, we're going to have projects in the future and things, please let us know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I got a chance to get into Angular. Chris got to learn a little bit about Docker deployments.
Well, I know Docker fairly well. It's just
the thing, and he also got to learn a bit about SMTP stuff involving DMARC and DKIM and all that other crazy stuff that goes with it.
Yeah.
And Patryk, do you know what he learned?
I learned the power of friendship.
Oh,
you beat me to it. How am I supposed?
Well, we did say that we're all the host.
I'm a thief of zingers. What can I say?
Of zingers.
Did you do it?
That's just crazy. On that note, massive love to you all, and we will see you throughout. We're going to start slow, but this is something that's going to be around for a while. And if you think you have got what it takes to teach us, and trust me, it really doesn't take much. If you've got some topic you want discussed, and you even want to be the one to discuss it, reach out to us. For now, through Twitter. But in the future, you can also hit us through our website. We'll have a working contact form. But you can also reach us at contact@dnistream.live.
That is right.
Yeah.
I'd just like to add that if you're not very good, we're not having you on. Simple as that.
And this is where I say, Chris, bad boy.
Yeah, like a lot of
I wouldn't be here if that was the case.
A lot of developers have imposter syndrome and like other mental issues. Like if you're gonna tell them that, they won't gonna come.
JKID, DNI stands for documentation not included.
It does, yes.
Indeed.
Yep.
Wait, do we have a documentation on our Git repo? Because if we do...
We actually do have a little documentation, but it's kind of required.
We should remove it.
Yeah, well, I usually do provide... This is the thing I was mentioning earlier on. I'm a stickler for documentation. I think it's very important if written correctly. And I'm all about getting it right. And at the moment, I haven't done because I've been under a rush. In a rush, I haven't done the website the same way that I normally do it. I'd usually do tests first, and I'd usually get the full...
Yes, tests weren't done when we were working through.
Hideous. I'm ashamed of myself. I'm ashamed of the commit history. I might squash them all into one big commit just to...
Tests? You mean live environment?
Yeah.
You are not squashing my awesome commits. I am sorry, no. I worked hard on those commit messages. I really did. I actually put thought into what could be interesting to read.
I've read them. I've read them, don't worry. Every time anyone...
messages are my bane. I guess just the worst.
I love commit messages. They're my favourite.
I hate writing them. Just like it's always hard to describe.
Matter of fact, and occasionally I'll throw a little joke in there, or I'll throw a little dig at something in there. That's a comment every now and again that's just going, what the fuck have I done here? Yeah. That's probably one of my favourite things.
Me and Lead Programmer had a pissing contest in commit messages for like 2 weeks straight, so it was fun.
But I'm noticing that Patryk has a lot of pissing contests.
Mm.
I mean, you have to establish your manliness. So
you have to establish your programming dominance.
Yeah, I do that with the monitors, the number of monitors I have.
We are all but apes. What can I say?
On that note, thank you all so much for watching. We will see you next week when we're going to have a guest come on who has developed an application that is currently live, sort of a software as a service app. And he is going to be talking JavaScript. And there is a lot to discuss in that particular one. So we'll see you in what will be our official very first episode next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.
So thanks once again, everybody, and we will see you shortly.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.